Simon & Schuster Audio presents The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. Read by the author.
December 2001. I became what I am today at the age of 12 on a frigid, overcast day in the winter of 1975. I remember the precise moment, crouching behind the crumbling mud wall, peeking into the alley near the frozen creek. That was a long time ago. But it's wrong what to say about the past, I've learned, about how you can bury it. Because the past claws its way out. Looking back now, I realize I've been peeking into that deserted alley for the last 26 years. One day last summer, my friend Rahim Khan called from Pakistan. He asked me to come see him. Standing in the kitchen with the receiver to my ear, I knew it wasn't just Rahim Khan on the line. It was my past of unatoned sins. After I hung up, I went for a walk along Spreckles Lake on the northern edge of Golden Gate Park. The early afternoon sun sparkled on the water where dozens of miniature boats sailed, propelled by a crisp breeze. Then I glanced up and saw a pair of kites, red with long blue tails, soaring in the sky. They danced high above the trees on the west end of the park, over the windmills, floating side by side like a pair of eyes looking down on San Francisco, the city I now call home. And suddenly, Hassan's voice whispered in my ear, "For you, 1,000 times over." Hassan, the hair-lipped kite runner.
A couple of things to notice within this reading. So far in these two paragraphs, we've seen a very heavy use of figurative language in the form of similes and personification. Furthermore, I think it's also worth noting that a hair-lipped kite runner is a reference to having a cleft palate. That means the roof of the mouth has a physical abnormality that is usually present at birth and can be repaired later on with some heavy and painful plastic surgery.
On a park bench near a willow tree, I thought about something Rahim Khan said just before he hung up, almost as an afterthought. There's a way to be good again. I looked up at those twin kites. I thought about Hassan, thought about Baba, Ali, Kabul. I thought of the life I had lived until the winter of 1975 came along and changed everything and made me what I am today.
So think about what it is that has made you who you are today. He has it nailed down to a precise date. That may not necessarily be true for everyone reading this.
Children, Hassan and I used to climb the poplar trees in the driveway of my father's house and annoy our neighbors by reflecting sunlight into their homes with a scrap of mirror. We would sit across from each other on a pair of high branches, our naked feet dangling, our trouser pockets filled with dried mulberries and walnuts. We took turns with the mirror as we ate mulberries, pelted each other with them, giggling, laughing. I can still see Hassan up on that tree, sunlight flickering through the leaves on his almost perfectly round face, a face like a Chinese doll chiseled from hardwood, his flat, broad nose and slanting, narrow eyes like bamboo leaves, eyes that looked, depending on the light, gold, green, even sapphire. I can still see his tiny, low-set ears and that pointed stub of a chin, a meaty appendage that looked like it was added as a mere afterthought, and the cleft lip just left of midline, where the Chinese dollmaker's instrument may have slipped, or perhaps he had simply grown tired and careless.
Here it's worthy of note that again, the figurative language is strong, and we're looking at a comparison with a Chinese doll maker or the personification of the doll.
Times, up in those trees, I talked Hassan into firing walnuts with his slingshot at the neighbor's one-eyed German shepherd. Hassan never wanted to, but if I asked, really asked, he wouldn't deny me. Hassan never denied me anything. And he was deadly with his slingshot. Hassan's father, Ali, used to catch us and get mad, or as mad as someone as gentle as Ali could ever get. He would wag his finger and wave us down from the tree. He would take the mirror and tell us what his mother had told him, that the devil shone mirrors too, shown them to distract Muslims during prayer. And he laughs while he does it, he always added, scowling at his son. Yes, father, Hassan would mumble, looking down at his feet. But he never told on me, never told that the mirror, like shooting walnuts at the neighbor's dog, was always my idea.
Keep an eye on Hassan. The character trait that might be loyalty. That might be strength of character. That might be worth examining again. And just a little heads up, keep an eye on the one-eyed German shepherd.
The trees lined the red brick driveway, which led to a pair of wrought iron gates. They in turn opened into an extension of the driveway into my father's estate. The house sat on the left side of the brick path, the backyard at the end of it. Everyone agreed that my father, my Baba, had built the most beautiful house in the Wazir Akbar Khan district, a new and affluent neighborhood in the northern part of Kabul. Some thought it was the prettiest house in all of Kabul. A broad entryway flanked by rose bushes led to the sprawling house of marble floors and wide windows. Intricate mosaic tiles, handpicked by Baba in Isfahan, covered the floors of the 4 bathrooms. Gold-stitched tapestries, which Baba had bought in Calcutta, lined the walls. A crystal chandelier hung from the vaulted ceiling. Upstairs was my bedroom, Baba's room, and his study, also known as the smoking room, which perpetually smelled of tobacco and cinnamon. Baba and his friends reclined on black leather chairs in that room after Ali had served dinner. They stuffed their pipes, except Baba always called it fattening the pipe, and discussed their favorite 3 topics: politics, business, soccer. Sometimes I asked Baba if I could sit with them, but Baba would stand in the doorway. Go on now, he'd say. This is grown-ups' time. Why don't you go read one of those books of yours? He'd close the door, leave me to wonder why it was always grown-ups' time with him. I'd sit by the door, knees drawn to my chest. Sometimes I sat there for an hour, sometimes 2, listening to their laughter, their chatter. The living room downstairs had a curved wall with custom-built cabinets. Inside sat framed family pictures. An old grainy photo of my grandfather and King Nader Shah, taken in 1931, 2 years before the king's assassination. They're standing over a dead deer, dressed in knee-high boots, rifles slung over their shoulders. There was a picture of my parents' wedding night, Baba dashing in his black suit, and my mother a smiling young princess in white. Here was Baba and his best friend and business partner, Rahim Khan, standing outside our house, neither one smiling. I'm a baby in that photograph, and Baba is holding me, looking tired and grim. I'm in his arms, but it's Rahim Khan's pinky my fingers are curled around.
Whose pinky? Rahim Khan's.
The curved wall led into the dining room, at the center of which was a mahogany table that could easily sit 30 guests. And given my father's taste for extravagant parties, it did just that almost every week. On the other end of the dining room was a tall marble fireplace, always lit by the orange glow of a fire in the wintertime. A large sliding glass door opened into a semicircular terrace that overlooked 2 acres of backyard and rows of cherry trees. Baba and Ali had planted a small vegetable garden along the eastern wall, tomatoes, mint, peppers, and a row of corn that never really took. Hassan and I used to call it the Wall of Ailing Corn. On the south end of the garden, in the shadows of a loquat tree, was a servant's home, a modest little mud hut where Hassan lived with his father. It was there, in that little shack, that Hassan was born in the winter of 1964, just 1 year after my mother died, giving birth to me. In the 18 years that I lived in that house, I stepped into Hassan and Ali's quarters only a handful of times. When the sun dropped low behind the hills and we were done playing for the day, Hassan and I parted ways. I went past the rose bushes to Baba's mansion, Hassan to the mud shack where he'd been born, where he'd lived his entire life. I remember it was spare, clean, dimly lit by a pair of kerosene lamps. There were two mattresses on opposite sides of the room, a worn Herati rug with frayed edges in between, a three-legged stool, and a wooden table in the corner where Hassan did his drawings. The walls stood bare, save for a single tapestry with sewn-in beads forming the words Allahu Akbar. Baba had bought it for Ali on one of his trips to Mashhad.
A couple of things to take note of here. One, Allahu Akbar basically means God is great. Secondly, within the same house, within the same compound, I should say, is where Amir and Hassan live, but they live in drastically different worlds. The author has gone out of his way to point out that Amir lives in a mansion and Hassan lives in a mud hut. But under Afghani tradition, the houses are going to be walled off. You think about a 10-foot wall surrounding the property. And within this wall are both Amir and Hassan, Baba and Ali. They all live together within the same confines, but two hugely different worlds.
Small shack that Hassan's mother, Sanaubar, gave birth to him one cold winter day in 1964. While my mother hemorrhaged to death during childbirth, Hassan lost his less than a week after he was born. Lost her to a fate most Afghans considered far worse than death. She ran off with a clan of traveling singers and dancers.
This speaks culturally to the idea of honor and integrity. As a reader, please take careful note that both boys, roughly the same age, have both lost mothers under different circumstances.
Never talked about his mother as if she'd never existed. I always wondered if he dreamed about her, about what she looked like, where she was. I wondered if he longed to meet her. Did he ache for her the way I ached for the mother I had never met? One day we were walking from my father's house to Cinema Zainab for a new Iranian movie, taking the shortcut through the military barracks near Istiqlal Middle School. Baba had forbidden us to take that shortcut, but he was in Pakistan with Rahim Khan at the time. We hopped the fence that surrounded the barracks, skipped over a little creek, and broke into the open dirt field where old abandoned tanks collected dust. A group of soldiers huddled in the shade of one of those tanks, smoking cigarettes and playing cards. One of them saw us, elbowed the guy next to him, and called Hassan. "Hey, you," he said. "I know you." We had never seen him before. He was a squatty man with a shaved head and black stubble on his face. The way he grinned at us, leered, scared me. "Just keep walking," I muttered to Hassan. "You, the Hazara, look at me when I'm talking to you," the soldier barked. He handed his cigarette to the guy next to him, made a circle with the thumb and index finger of one hand, poked the middle finger of his other hand through the circle, poked it in and out, in and out. "I knew your mother, did you know that? I knew her real good. I took her from behind by that creek over there." The soldiers laughed. One of them made a squealing sound. I told Hassan to keep walking, keep walking. "Oh, what a tight little sugary cunt she had," the soldier was saying, shaking hands with the others, grinning. Later, in the dark, after the movie had started, I heard Hassan next to me, croaking. Tears were sliding down his cheeks. I reached across my seat and slung my arm around him, pulled him close. He rested his head on my shoulder. "He took you for someone else," I whispered. He took you for someone else.
If you feel uncomfortable with the use of word choices, that is intentional. The fact that a soldier is directing his language at a little kid who have never interacted with before and then would go so far as to be that level of vulgar is meant to make the reader uncomfortable. So if you are uncomfortable with that piece, it is intentionally designed to irritate the reader. Secondly, when we talk of honor, nothing here is in any way honorable. So this is further establishing the childhood for both of these boys.
I was really surprised when Sanobar eloped. People had raised their eyebrows when Ali, a man who had memorized the Quran, married Sanobar, a woman 19 years younger, a beautiful but notoriously unscrupulous woman who lived up to her dishonorable reputation. Like Ali, she was a Shia Muslim and an ethnic Hazara. She was also his first cousin and therefore a natural choice for a spouse. But beyond those similarities, Ali and Sanobar had little in common, least of all their respective appearances. While Sanobar's brilliant green eyes and impish face had, rumor had it, tempted countless men into sin, Ali had a congenital paralysis of his lower facial muscles, a condition that rendered him unable to smile and left him perpetually grim-faced. It was an odd thing to see the stone-faced Ali happy or sad, because only his slanted brown eyes glinted with a smile or welled with sorrow. People say that eyes are the windows to the soul. Never was that more true than with Ali, who could only reveal himself through his eyes. I have heard that Sanobar's suggestive stride and oscillating hips sent men to reveries of infidelity, but polio had left Ali with a twisted, atrophied right leg that was sallow skin over bone with little in between except a paper-thin layer of muscle. I remember one day when I was 8, Ali was taking me to the bazaar to buy some naan. I was walking behind him, humming and trying to imitate his walk. I watched him swing his scraggy leg in a sweeping arc, watched his whole body tilt impossibly to the right every time he planted that foot. It seemed a minor miracle he didn't tip over with each step. When I tried it, I almost fell into the gutter. That got me giggling. Ali turned around and caught me aping him. He didn't say anything. Not then, not ever.
So Ali catches Amir making fun of him, mocking him the way that a child might, but says nothing. Think about two reasons why this might be the case. One reason that you might arrive at is that Ali is clearly a servant for Amir's father. The second reason might have to do again with the idea of honor. By naming it, you dishonor yourself, perhaps.
Just kept walking. Ali's face and his walk frightened some of the younger children in the neighborhood, but the real trouble was with the older kids. They chased him on the street and mocked him when he hobbled by. Some had taken to calling him Babalu or Boogeyman. Hey, Babalu, who did you eat today? They barked to a chorus of laughter. Who did you eat, you flat-nosed Babalu? They called him flat-nosed because of Ali and Hassan's characteristic Hazara Mongoloid features. For years, that was all I knew about the Hazaras, that they were Mughal descendants, and that they looked a little like Chinese people. School textbooks barely mentioned them and referred to their ancestry only in passing. Then one day, I was in Baba's study looking through his stuff when I found one of my mother's old history books. It was written by an Iranian guy named Khorrami. I blew the dust off it and sneaked it into bed with me that night and was stunned to find an entire chapter on Hazara history. An entire chapter dedicated to Hassan's people. In it, I read that my people, the Pashtuns, had persecuted and oppressed the Hazaras. It said the Hazaras had tried to become free time and time again over the centuries, but the Pashtuns had quelled them with unspeakable violence. The book said that my people had killed the Hazaras, tortured them, burnt their homes, and sold their women. The book said part of the reason Pashtuns had massacred the Hazaras was that Pashtuns were Sunni Muslims. while Hazaras was Shia. The book said a lot of things I didn't know, things my teachers hadn't mentioned, things Baba hadn't mentioned either. It also said some things I did know, like that people called Hazaras mice eating, flat nosed, load carrying donkeys. I had heard some of the kids in the neighborhood yell those names to Hassan.
As a point of reference, this is true for all cultures across the planet, where history gets rewritten, edited, and reduced to what is conveniently retold.
After class, I showed the book to my teacher and pointed to the chapter on the Hazaras. He skimmed through a couple of pages, snickered, handed the book back. That's the one thing Shia people do well, he said, picking up his papers, passing themselves as martyrs. He wrinkled his nose when he said the word Shia, like it was some kind of disease. But despite sharing ethnic heritage and family blood, Sanobar joined the neighborhood kids in taunting Ali. I have heard that she made no secret of her disdain for his appearance. This is a husband? She would sneer. I've seen old donkeys better suited to be a husband. In the end, most people suspected the marriage had been an arrangement of sorts between Ali and his uncle, Sanobar's father. They said Ali had married his cousin to help restore some honor to his uncle's blemished name. Ali never retaliated against any of his tormentors, I suppose partly because he could never catch them with that twisted leg dragging behind him, but mostly because Ali was immune to the insults of his assailants. He had found his joy, his antidote, the moment Sanobar had given birth to Hassan. It had been a simple enough affair. No obstetricians, no anesthesiologists, no fancy monitoring devices, just Sanobar lying on a stained, naked mattress with Ali and a midwife helping her. She hadn't needed much help at all because even in birth, Hassan was true to his nature. He was incapable of hurting anyone. A few grunts, a couple of pushes, and out came Hassan. Out he came, smiling. As confided to a neighbor's servant by the garrulous midwife, who had then in turn told anyone who would listen, Sanabar had taken one glance at the baby in Ali's arms, seen the cleft lip, and barked a bitter laughter. There, she had said, now you have your own idiot child to do all your smiling for you. She had refused to even hold Hassan, and just 5 days later, she was gone. Baba hired the same nursing woman who had fed me to nurse Hassan. Ali told us she was a blue-eyed Hazara woman from Bamyan, the city of the giant Buddha statues. What a sweet singing voice she had, he used to say to us. What does she sing? Hassan and I always asked, though we already knew. Ali had told us countless times. We just wanted to hear Ali sing. He'd clear his throat and begin. On a high mountain I stood and cried the name of Ali, Lion of God. O Ali, Lion of God, King of men, bring joy to our sorrowful hearts. Then he would remind us that there was a brotherhood between people who had fed from the same breast, a kinship that not even time could break. Hassan and I fed from the same breasts. We took our first steps on the same lawn in the same yard, and under the same roof we spoke our first words. Mine was Baba, his was Amir, my name. Looking back on it now, I think the foundation for what happened in the winter of 1975 and all that followed was already laid in those first words.
All right, this concludes the first couple chapters of The Kite Runner. Things that are worthy of note are looking at how the author is constructing a point of view. First, the use of figurative language is thick, heavy, strong. The use of personification, the use of simile, the use of metaphor. There's some strong allusions that are going on. So identifying and using those would be worth your time. Secondly, we are looking at parallel journeys. We are looking at Amir and Hassan. We are looking at Ali and Baba. We are looking at people that have grown up together, the people that are living in the same house. We are looking at cultural conflicts. This is how the chapters are used in the beginning to establish an initial conflict. Thank you very much. Let's see what happens in chapter 3.